Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife review for you. I'd like to show you this. It is my Schrade SCH, see if I can get the letters to show up there. There we go, 307. This is one of the 300 series of knives that Schrade is doing. They're all big, beefy stainless steel knives, way overbuilt, every one of them, and this one is no exception. You can see the blade stock is like 1/8 of an inch. It's actually more than 1/8 of an inch thick. The handle frame is a little less than 1/8 of an inch. The lockup, you can see, is really good because you've just got so much steel to work with. The lockup is outstanding. So just a very, very heavily built knife. And so here's some numbers for you. It's a 3.4 inch blade, 4.6 inch handle. Here's the standout thing about this knife: 7.4 ounces. 7.4 ounces. That's huge. I don't own any other knives that are nearly this heavy, and that's going to be, a problem for a lot of people. I'm going to say this is probably not the knife you want to carry every single day in your pocket, but I'll get to that when I start to think of how to use this knife. What else do you want to know? Oh yeah, the blade steel is 9CR13 MOV, which means it's going to hold an edge reasonably well, and when it's time to resharpen it, which will happen, it's going to take an edge pretty easily. So nothing, ground earth shattering there. One thing I should point out is the thickness of this blade puts it in a particular category in terms of usefulness. This is probably not a good food prep knife. It's not a good slicing knife because it's so thick that you've got a real wedge action there, where if you're pushing this through something, the blade may be razor sharp, but you've got to push more than 1/8 of an inch of steel through something that you're trying to pull apart. Now, if you're trying to split kindling or something, man, it's going to really excel at that because that wide blade is going to push that material apart really well. But if you're trying to cut up a banana, it's going to like smush it, or even a hot dog. It's going to be damaging the food that you're trying to cut. I would say this knife is a very useful tool. Any time or any place that you're afraid of breaking a knife, any time or any place that you think, man, I could lose my knife doing this, or any kind of situation where you're going, yeah, I don't know if I want to bring my knife that was expensive or it could be a little bit fragile. Man, bring this. It's just a tank. You're gonna be really hard pressed to break this thing. And in fact, Cutlery Lover is going to do a destruction test on one of these series of knives, and I'm waiting for that because I'll be interested to see what he can do to break it, other than like get out a grinder and cut it in half, right? I think this knife is a pretty useful knife. I've used it a fair bit. The handle size and shape makes it very, very easy to bear down on and really push on, which I think is great. The handle shape, the blade shape, the Tanto blade, is very utilitarian. That secondary tip gives you a great option for cutting any kind of motion like this. I was cutting some bigger boxes and I would reach across the box, and if I was going to do that, to get the tip of the knife in, I'd kind of have to get in a weird angle on the knife. But because of that secondary tip, you can just kind of sink that secondary tip into the material, draw it back across, and you get a really nice cut that allows you to have good ergonomics on your knife when you're trying to make the cut, which was really handy. I did some heavy cutting with this. I was like folding cardboard. I had to cut cardboard anyway, but I thought let's push it. So I'd fold it 3, 4, 5 layers and just force my way through, and I had no discomfort in my hand, not even a hint of weakness in the knife. So this knife is going to be super strong, super easy to use for all of those really, really hard cutting tasks. Now, let's get to who might want this knife and what they might want it for. I gotta say, there may be some of you out there who just love this knife and you want to carry it every day. That's good. If you feel like you can do that, that's awesome, but this thing is going to feel like a lead weight in your pocket. I know, because I've carried it for a few days just so that I could do this review. A lot of times I have taken it out halfway through the day, I'll be honest, and switched it out for something else. But I have carried it. It's heavy. It's useful, no question. It does its job well. You're never going to break it, but it's heavy. So that said, what else would you use a knife like this for? Well, when I worked a lot of construction, I obviously wearing a tool belt all the time, and I often put a folding knife in my tool belt. This would be perfect for that because it's going to survive anything a construction site can throw at it. If you're going to use a knife for, out in the garage where you might be prying or pushing, trying to separate two steel parts, or, prying on something when you're fixing a bike tire or whatever, this is a great knife for that. Look at the size of that blade. You're not going to break it. Pry on it all you want. It's thicker than I think my Wonder Bar is at home. So any kind of heavy use like that, anything where it's a situational knife, where it can stay somewhere until you need it, then you can pick it up and use it. Great. In the car, in a car safety kit. If you're going to put it in your backpack safety kit, be careful because that weight's going to add up quickly. Maybe for a day hike where you're not carrying that much stuff and you're not really concerned about weight, yeah, go ahead. Probably super useful for some of those bushcraft items that you may want to do with it. So that's where I see the usefulness of this knife. I'm going to say if you're looking at this going, man, it's one last thing that I need to comment on, by the way, I nearly forgot, which would have been a bad thing, is price. This knife is very, very, very affordable. Like 25, even 20, 22, 23, but 25 bucks is going to be, a reasonable price to pay for this, and you can even find it cheaper. Now, that being said, I got to issue a warning. If you want this knife and you're looking for it, shop around. I saw some places selling this thing on Amazon.ca. Now, I am in Canada. Amazon.ca for $51. You would have to have your head on backwards to pay $51 for this knife. So shop around. Make sure you don't get ripped off. There's no way this thing is worth $51, other than that some companies know there's not that many of them out there because it's just new for this year, okay? This might be a knife to wait till you're traveling down to the US to pick up because it's so much cheaper down there. Might be a knife to order from Amazon.com and ship it to a friend, or maybe go on eBay and pick it up that way using your PayPal account and, get it from a US seller because they're not an expensive knife at all. And I don't know why it seems to be somewhat exorbitantly priced here in Canada. And the same is true of this whole series. I've seen some of the other knives in this series for $52, $56, $48, and all those prices are way, way too high. You should be paying somewhere in the $20 to $25 mark for this knife, or really all the knives in that series. I've seen them all for about that price, like $22, $23. So price is outstanding for what you get, and that's a great thing about this. Now, if you're looking for one of those low-cost knives that you can carry every day, I think there are better options out there. The Rat Model 1, although it's still about 5 ounces, it's quite a bit lighter, and it's almost just as useful. We could add to that list like the Bird Caracara, which is a fantastic knife, or whatever the smaller. There's another one. The Meadowlark is the other bird knife that's like that. Spyderco Tenacious is a little more expensive, but the resilience is only about 30 bucks. I mean, the persistence, is only about 30 bucks. And so any one of those knives, and there are others, the Ontario Utilitac, even a Kershaw Cryo is like 30 bucks. All these knives are a little cheaper, are about the same price as this, but are going to be a little lighter and a little more realistic for an everyday carry knife. As I said, maybe you're carrying one of those already, but you'd like something that's really heavy duty for that 1 or 2 days a week where you've got to do some heavy duty cuttings. Well, then that's a good reason to own a knife like this, or one of the others out of the 300 series of knives. I'm going to try to get my hands on a couple other 300 series. One, they're cheap, they look really cool, and they're very, very useful. So there's no reason why not to have a couple of them. And as I do that, I'll keep you updated on what I continue to think about this knife. But as it stands right now, super useful knife. I have everyday carried it for a little while. I won't be doing it much more unless I have a specific purpose for it. But great knife, extremely well built for a very, very reasonable price. That's the review. Make some comments. If anyone else has one of these knives, or if you know a place to get it for a reasonable price, please put that in the comments with a date so that people watching this later don't go looking for the price you gave 5 years ago. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next time.